Stuka Joe here, and today we'll be doing a demonstration of the CDG solo method I've been working on during the last month or so. We'll be using the 5th edition of Paths of Glory by GMT. This is the mounted map board, and we have it set up for August 1914, the first turn. We'll be playing a full turn, and here are the card displays that the method uses, and by the time this video is in the internet, you can download these displays from Board Game Geek's Paths of Glory page from the files section. We'll be taking a look at the displays first and give a brief explanation of what they are and what they're used for, and then we'll look at the starting positions of each of the sides at the beginning of the game. Here we see the card display that we will use for the central powers. We have already separated the mobilization deck, and the card display has 7 spaces: the draw pile space and the discard pile space, and we have this track here composed of 5 spaces where we place cards, and each space has die roll range, and you see that the range in spaces A and E is 1 to 3 with a D6, that is 50%. The range in spaces B and D is 1 to 4, which is 67%. And the range in space C is 1 through 5, that's around 83%. And that is the range for a successful activation of a card that you nominate. In this method, the card that you select does not get automatically played. You have to roll for it. And some cards have a better chance of being played than the others. The best one is the card in space C. But even that card, if you roll a white die roll of 6, it doesn't get played. And you always roll 2 dice, and you consult the white die first against the range. And if the white die roll falls within the range, that card gets played. But if the white die roll does not fall within the range, then you play the card associated to the number on the black die. In that case, it would be the card in space B for whatever purpose you like. In card-driven games, there's no random events, and that is quite ironic because each card has an event stated on it. Now, we will have random events in this game. In this method, each time you roll a double, and let's say that you roll double 2. Let's say you nominated this card, but you rolled double 2. That means that the card in space B, which has the double 2 symbol, gets played for its event, unless it is a combat card or unless the requirements for the event are not met, in which case then you play it for whatever purpose you like, and so forth if you roll double 1, double 3, double 4, and double 5. But if you roll a double 6, then we take the card from the draw pile, reveal it, and play that card for its event, unless it's a combat event card or its requirements have not been met for the event, in which case we play it for whatever purpose that we like. And after we play the card and resolve the consequences of the play on the map, then we rotate all the cards on the track 1 space, so the card in space E goes to the discard pile, and then all remaining cards are moved to the right, so we will have, in most instances, spaces A and B empty. Then we draw 2 cards from the draw pile, we leave them face down, and then we play the next side. In this case, the allies, without knowing the composition or the identity of cards A and B. and we will know the identity of those cards when the Central Powers go for their next round, or when we have to resolve a combat situation initiated by the Allies. Then we flip the cards that were face down in spaces A and B. So this is, in a nutshell, how this method works. I'm going to play one full turn of Paths of Glory, and I'm not going to concentrate a lot on the rules of the game, but more on this solitaire CDG method. And of course, your comments and views are deeply appreciated. My goal is not, of course, to change the essence of this game. This is a two-player game, but only to improve the solitaire experience of card-driven games. And if this is the beginning of something that will improve that experience, it is worthwhile. So let's start, and let's take a look at the positions of the starting forces for August 1914. Okay, here are the starting positions. Let's take a closer look at the situation on the Western Front. The Germans have concentrated there 7 of their 8 armies. 6 of them are at full strength, and we see that they are concentrated from Aachen to Mulhouse. The Allies, on the other hand, have 5 French armies in close proximity and 2 reduced strength French armies behind the lines. We have the British Expeditionary Force, which starts the game here at Brussels with a level 1 trench, and the Belgian army in Antwerp. Now we turn our attention to the Eastern Front, especially around East Prussia, where the Germans have their remaining army, which is the 8th Army here in Insterburg, with 1 German infantry corps also there. The Russians have 2 of their armies, the 1st and 2nd, nearby, and 3 infantry corps a march away. Now, taking a look further to the south, we see that in Russia and Poland and around the Carpathian Mountains, the Russians have 4 armies facing 3 full-strength Austro-Hungarian armies and also a reduced army in Munkacs. Further to the southwest, we have the Serbian front, where the Austro-Hungarians have 2 of their armies and an infantry corps facing 2 Serbian armies and their allies, a Montenegrin corps in Cetinje. In the Near East map, the Russians have 3 infantry corps in their border with neutral Turkey. The British have 2 reduced infantry corps in Egypt, each in level 1 trenches, and further to the east, 1 reduced infantry corps also in a level 1 trench in Basra, Iraq. Okay, we begin by dealing out the initial hand for the Central Powers. By special rule, this card, Guns of August, has to be in the initial hand, and in this CDG method, instead of a regular hand of 7 cards, we have a hand of 5 cards. But the 5 cards are not reduced round by round. We always have 5 cards to choose from in each round, as you will see. Now, there are 14 mobilization cards. This card has to be in the initial hand, so we will shuffle these cards and we will deal out 4. And we will place the rest here to form the draw pile. And these 4, we will mix the Guns of August card with these 4 cards, and we will place them 1 card in each of the spaces here, A, B, C, D, and E. Now we take the Allied mobilization deck. It has 14 cards. We shuffle the deck, and we place 1 card in each of spaces A, B, C, D, and E. The remaining cards form the draw pile. We begin by revealing all the cards in the Central Powers track, that is, the cards from spaces A to E. The first card is Sud Army, and it has an ops value of 3. Falkenhayn, which has a parenthesized 2, meaning that if played for its event, it increases the war status by 2, has an ops value of 4. In the C space, we have Entrench with an ops value of 3. Reichstag Truce, which increases the war status by 1 if played for the event, has an ops value of 4. And finally, the card that we talked about before, Guns of August, is in space E with an ops value of 3. Now, using this CDG method, most of the time when we play one side, which we will call the active side, we will only know the identity of 3 of the 5 cards of the inactive side. And at the beginning of the game, we only flip 3 of the cards of the inactive side, which is the Allies, who always go second. So we're going to flip the cards in spaces C, D, and E. In space C, Pleve, which is a combat event card, has an ops value of 2. In space D, Russian reinforcements, also with an ops value of 2. And note that by special rule, in the first turn of the game, none of the sides can play any card for a reinforcement event. And finally, the card in space E is another reinforcement card, Russian reinforcements, with an ops value of 3. So the first phase is the mandated offensive phase, and we roll for the Allies and the Central Powers to see if any of the nations that are in the alliance has to conduct mandatorily at least one attack in the turn, and if that happens and they don't attack, that side loses 1 victory point. So we roll 1d6 for the Allies, and the roll is a 3. The British have to conduct an offensive this turn. Now we do the same for the Central Powers. We roll 1d6. The result is a 6. No mandatory attacks in turn 1. So now we go to the first action round, and the Central Powers always play the first action round of each turn. And this card has a special rule that it can only be played for its event in this first action round of August 1914. Now, when we have a card like that, that has to be played for its event or not be played at all, we obviate the CDG solo method of nominating a card and rolling for it. In which case, if the Central Powers want to play this card, it gets played automatically, and we will play this card for its event. So there will be no dice rolling to see if the card is played or not. Now, this card has the benefit for the Central Powers that the Liège fort in Belgium is destroyed. That fort lies in the middle of the path of 3 German armies on their way to France, and we would place the German 1st and 2nd armies in that space and then activate the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd armies for combat. Now, this card has an asterisk, meaning that once it is played for its event, it is permanently removed from the game, and when played for its event, as signified by the parenthesized 2, the Central Powers war status is increased by 2. So we increase the Central Powers war status by 2, and also the combined war status, which is the sum of the Central Powers and Allied war statuses. That marker also goes in the 2 space. So here we see the situation. The Liège fort is destroyed. And we placed a destroyed fort marker on the space. Next, we placed the German 1st and 2nd armies there. And now we activate the Liège space as well as the Koblenz space where the German 3rd Army is for attack. And the Germans have various options. They can have the 1st and 2nd armies attack the British Expeditionary Force in Brussels. The downside is that the British are in a level 1 trench. That has the effect of reducing the German attack by 1 column to the left and increasing the defending British fire one column to the right. And the other option they have is attacking with all three armies the French Fifth Army at Sedan. And the Germans could even attempt a flank attack against the French army, and if the flank attack is successful, combat would not be considered simultaneous, but the Germans would fire first, and then we would take the losses that the French suffer, and with what they have remaining, they would fire back at the Germans. Because we're about to resolve attack against the Allies, now we flip the face-down cards in spaces A and B. And that is done to see if there's any eligible combat cards. There's no combat cards in spaces A and B. There is one combat card, however, in space C, but that card cannot be played in this combat situation because it can only be played when there are Russian units involved. So now we proceed to resolve first whether the flank attack is successful. We designate a pinning force, and that will be the force here in Liège, and this will be the flanking force. And if the flanking force is not adjacent to any other enemy unit that is not being attacked, the attacking side gets a +1 die roll modifier, and if the final die roll modifier is 4 or more, the flank attack is successful. So we roll 1d6 and add 1, and the result is a 2 modified to a 3. The flank attack is not successful. And when a flank attack fails, the defender now fires first. We adjudicate the casualties to the attacker, and the remaining attacking forces then fire. So we fire with the Fifth Army 3 combat factors. We will show this combat resolution in detail because it's the first one that you'll see. And then in the next combat situations, we will proceed in a more expedited fashion. We roll 1d6 on the 3 column for the French attack, and the roll is a 3, 2 loss factors on the Germans. And here we see that the Germans, by flipping any of their units to absorb the loss, would lose 3 loss factors. That is the number in the center. And in this game, if you would end up losing more loss factors than called for by the result, then the result is ignored. So those 2 loss factors are ignored, and the Germans are not flipped to their reduced side, any of their units. And now the Germans fire on the 15 combat factor column, 1d6, and they roll a 1, but that 1 causes 4 loss factors on the French. So the French suffer 4 loss factors. We reduce the 5th French Army by flipping it to its backside. And now there's 1 loss factor remaining, but if we eliminate the 5th French Army and then replace it with a full-strength corps, that would cause a loss of 3 loss factors, which would be in excess of the remaining loss factor. So that last loss factor is ignored. So the Germans are victorious in this battle, and the French now have to retreat. However, because the French Fifth Army occupies a forest space, it can elect to suffer 1 more step loss to avoid the retreat. And that's what it will do. So the 5th French Army is eliminated, and we place it in the Allied eliminated replaceable units box. It may return later to the game. And in its place, we will place a full-strength French infantry corps from the Allied reserve box. And it is placed in Sedan, and the Germans don't get to advance. And that is the end of the first Central Powers action round. And we place a Central Powers first action marker in the other event box here of the action round chart. The purpose of this chart is to aid players in not violating the rules. For example, a player can only play 1 card for reinforcements per nation per turn, or bring, for example, one neutral country into the game per turn, and it can be only one per turn, not per player. So this is a good player aid to stay within the boundaries of the rules. And we finished playing this card, Guns of August, for its event. It has an asterisk. It is now permanently removed from the game. And now we rotate the cards. We rotate the Reichstag truce card one space to the right, and we fill all spaces to the right. And this is a situation where we only fill one space with a card from the draw pile. In most instances, it'll be spaces A and B. And we leave that card face down, and that's the end of the Central Powers first action round. Now we proceed to the Allies first action round. We see that the French have held at Sedan, but at high cost. And Sedan is a forest space, meaning that even if the Germans attack that lonesome core there and demolish it, and the difference in lost points is 2 or greater, they would not be able to advance beyond Sedan. They would have to stop there. If this were a non-forest space, then in that particular eventuality, the Germans would be able to advance 2 spaces. The Allies have the Moltke card, which can only be played in August or September 1914. And this card has the effect of increasing the cost to activate spaces by 1 ops per unit, not per space, until the Falkenhayn card is played. The Central Powers has the Falkenhayn card, and it is currently in the best space possible on the track, in the C space, 1 to 5. So the Allies may want to play the Moltke card, but its effect may not be lasting at all. But in any event, the play of the Falkenhayn card would cause the Central Powers to lose an opportunity to move their forces. So the Allies will nominate the Moltke card for play. So we have to roll 2 dice to see if the card is played or not. And we need a 1 to 4 with the white die. So here we go. And the roll is a white 2. So the Moltke card is played for its event. And Central Powers activation in Belgium or France will cost now 1 ops per unit until the Falkenhayn card is played, and all units must be activated in a space, and this supersedes the Sud Army and the 11th Army card effects. So this means that the Germans, for instance, if they activate the Metz space, they would have to pay 2 ops because they have 2 armies, as well as the Liège space. So if they want to execute a 3-army attack on Sedan, that would be 3 ops. And we place the Allied first action marker in the other event space on the Allied action round chart. This card, Moltke, was played for its event. It has an asterisk, so this card is removed permanently from the game. Now we do card rotation. The card in space E goes to the discard pile, and we move all remaining cards all the way to the right. And now we fill spaces A and B with new cards from the draw pile, and we leave them face down. And that's the end of the first Allied action round. And now we go to the second Central Powers action round, and we flip the card in space A. It is Austria-Hungary reinforcements, an Ops 4 card, and again, in the first turn, no card can be played for its event as a reinforcement card. So this is one of those cards. Now the Germans could conceivably launch a strong offensive against Sedan. After all, there's just only one full-strength French corps there, but the cost would be to attack with these 3 armies, it would be 3 ops. And the Germans have a way of eliminating that restriction with the Falkenhayn card, but that would mean 1 round in which they would not be attacking. So what will the Germans do? The Germans' hand has 2 other 4 ops cards, Austria-Hungary reinforcements and Reichstag truce, but these are in the least probable spaces for a play, the 50-50 spaces. Now, in the case that any of these cards are not actually played and we get the lowest ops value cards, which would be these 2, it would still be 3 ops, enough to launch a 3-army attack against Sedan. So the Germans will hold off on trying to play Falkenhayn, and the Germans will nominate this card, Reichstag truce, to be played for its ops, and we will roll 2 dice to see what happens. Needs a 1 to 3 with a white die, and it fails. Instead, the card in space 1 is the one that is played, which is Austria-Hungary reinforcement. So it was not bad for the Germans. They will play this card for its ops value of 4. And the Germans will activate Metz and Koblenz for attack, and that costs 3 ops because there's 2 German units in Metz and 1 in Koblenz, and they will both attack the French corps defending at Sedan. With 1 ops left to spend, the Germans will activate their forces in Insterburg for movement, and we always resolve movement actions before combats, so the Germans will move both of their units from Insterburg to Tannenberg. And now to the attack against Sedan. The Germans have 15 combat factors, the French 1. We flip the 2 face-down Allied cards in spaces A and B, and there is 1 eligible combat card, and that is withdrawal. The Germans have no combat card to play, so now whenever you have a combat card on the non-active side, you have to roll to see if the card gets played. So when you're the active player playing for one side, you can choose whichever combat cards you like as the attacker, but as the non-active defender, you have to roll to see if the combat card gets played or not. In this case, we will roll 1d6, and on a roll of 1 to 4, the withdrawal card, which is eligible to be played, will be played in this particular combat situation. The result is a 6. The withdrawal card is not played, and it remains in place. So now we resolve the attack. 15 German factors firing. The roll is a 1. 4 loss factors inflicted on the French. Now the French fire with 1 combat factor. The French roll is 6 on the core fire table, and that causes 1 loss factor on the Germans. The defending French have to flip and eliminate the French corps there, which can only absorb 2 loss factors, so the rest non-absorbed factors are ignored. The unit is eliminated and placed in the Allied eliminated / replaceable units box. Now the Germans, if they flip any of their units, they will lose more factors than called for by the combat result, so that sole loss factor result is ignored. And now the Germans can advance any of their full-strength armies into Sedan. They will advance the 3rd and 4th armies into that space. And normally they could advance 1 more space, but because Sedan is a wood space, that's the end of the advance, and that's the end of the 2nd Central Powers action round. Now we place the 2nd Central Power action round marker in the Ops card space. The card that was played for its Ops value, so it is placed in the discard pile. Now we perform rotation, and we will draw 2 cards from the draw pile, which we place face down in spaces A and B. And now we move on to the Allied second round, and all cards are face up because we had a combat situation during the Central Powers action round. Here we see the situation on the Western Front. The Germans have broken through at Sedan. They have 2 full-strength armies. They have not suffered any step reduction, and they're 2 spaces away from Paris. The French have several armies, although some of them are not at full strength, which can be moved to plug the gap at Cambrai and Château-Thierry. Turning our attention to the Eastern Front, note that most of the German units in this area are in Russian forts by special rule. The Germans cannot attack spaces with Russian forts until they either play their Oberost event or the war status reaches level 4, and it is currently at level 2, so the Russian units are there pretty safe. So the Russians may want to start concentrating their units to attack the Germans at the earliest moment. Now, turning our attention south, we see that the 3rd Austro-Hungarian Army is pretty exposed there at Tarnopol. So if the Allies have enough numbers of ops points, they may be able to inflict some damage on that 3rd Army. Here we see the card situation for the Allies. The situation in France is critical, and they need some ops to plug that line. And luckily for the Allies, they have a 4 ops card in the best position, the C space. So the Allies nominate this card, British Reinforcements. And they need a 1 to 5 with a white die. And the result is a white 4. So the card is played for its ops value of 4. And now the French will activate Verdun and Nancy for movement. And with 2 ops left, they will activate Dubno and Kamenets-Podolsky for attack. We resolve the movement actions first. The French army moves from Verdun 2 spaces to Cambrai. And the 4th army moves 1 space to Château-Thierry. And finally, the French 1st Army moves 1 space into Verdun. And now we proceed to resolve the Russian attack on the 3rd Austro-Hungarian Army at Tarnopol. We first check to see if the Central Powers have any eligible combat cards. And we flip the cards in spaces A and B. And none of the cards nor the other cards are combat cards. The Allies have 2 combat cards, but the withdrawal combat card is not eligible because it can only be used in defense. However, Pleve is eligible, and it will be used by the Russians for a +1 die roll modifier on attack. The Russians will not attempt a flank attack, so they will attack with 6 combat factors, and the Austro-Hungarians will fire back with 3, and we will roll both dice simultaneously. And both sides rolled a 5, and the Austro-Hungarians suffer 5 loss factors and lose the battle. The Russians suffer 3. The Austro-Hungarian Third Army is reduced, absorbing 2 loss factors. They have to absorb 3 more. So now the army is eliminated, and it is placed in the Central Powers Eliminated Replaceable Units box. And in its place, we place a full-strength, and it is replaced on the map with a full-strength infantry corps. And there's still 1 loss factor to be taken into account, so we flip the full-strength infantry corps to its reduced side. And now the Russians have to suffer 3 loss factors. The 8th Army is reduced, absorbing 2 loss factors. There's 1 left, and that 1 loss factor will be ignored because by flipping or eliminating one of the armies, the Russians will suffer more losses than called for by the result. So now the Austro-Hungarians have to retreat 2 spaces because the loss difference in loss factors was 2. So they will retreat through Lemberg into Stanislav. Now the Russians have the option of advancing up to 2 spaces. And the only army that can advance is a full-strength army. So the Third Army will advance through Tarnopol into Lemberg. And we mark Tarnopol with an Allied marker, and Lemberg is a victory point space. And the Central Powers lose 1 victory point, so we place the victory point marker in the number 9 box of the General Records track. We place the Allied second action round marker in the Ops card space. And here are the 2 cards played in this action round. This card was played for its Ops, so it goes into the discard pile. This card was played for its combat event, and it has an asterisk, so it is permanently removed from the game. And now we perform rotation. Russian reinforcements goes to the discard pile, and we slide the remaining 2 cards all the way to the right. And now we fill spaces A, B, and C with fresh cards from the draw pile, which we leave face down. Now we go to the 3rd Central Powers round. We don't flip any cards because there was a combat situation in the preceding action round. And what is interesting now is that the Central Powers are still hampered by that limitation of having to pay ops points for each unit in each space activated. And the Falkenhayn card is in the D space with a pretty decent chance of getting played. If the Central Powers play some other card, they will risk Falkenhayn moving here to the E space where it is a 50-50 proposition. And playing the Falkenhayn card now has the risk of surrendering the initiative to the Allies on the Western Front. You see, the Allies have plugged the gaps, but their forces are pretty weak to defend Verdun. Only 1 army there, as well as 1 army in the other fortress, Nancy. And after weighing the pros and cons, the Central Powers decide that they want to play the Falkenhayn card now. So that card is nominated, and with a 1 to 4 it gets played. So we roll the 2 dice, and the white result is a 3. Falkenhayn is played for its event, and this card cancels the effect of Moltke and allows the play of place of execution. And it increases the Central Powers war status by 2 points. And we place a Central Power war status marker and the combined war status marker in the number 4 box. And in the next turn, September 1914, after the action phase during the war status phase, the Germans or the Central Powers would be able to add to their deck the limited war cards. And the limited war deck adds 20 more cards to the Central Powers arsenal. But for now, we're still with the mobilization deck. We place the Central Powers 3rd action marker in their other event box. Falkenhayn, having an asterisk and played for its event, is removed permanently from the game, and now we rotate the cards, and Trench goes to the discard pile, and we move all other cards all the way to the right and take new cards from the draw pile in spaces A and B. The Allies have managed to steal 1 action round in terms of initiative from the Germans. And notice that the British are forced to conduct an attack this turn because of the mandated offensive table, or the Allies will lose 1 victory point, but the Allies are in no position to attack any of the German spaces in the Western Front in this action round. Let's reveal the cards in spaces A through C. And not wanting to play the Rape of Belgium or the blockade card now for ops, the Allies nominate Russian reinforcements to be played for its ops. So we roll the dice. 1 through 4 is needed with the white die. Uh-oh, we have a double 5, and that means that the withdrawal card is selected for play, and it is a combat card. So it cannot be used for its event because this is not a combat situation. So under this CDG solo method, we can play the card for any other purpose except the event. And given the present situation on the Western Front, we will play the card for its ops value of 2. And the Allies place move markers on Bar-le-Duc and Brussels. The British Expeditionary Force moves from Brussels to Château-Thierry, and the French 9th Army moves 3 spaces to Brussels. The Allies are hoping to set up the BEF to make an attack with the French in a future impulse so that they don't lose that victory point, and also put more forces between the Germans and Paris. And the Allied third action marker goes in the ops card space. And the withdrawal card that was played for its ops goes into the discard pile, and we rotate the remaining cards, and only one new card goes to space A. Fourth Central Powers action round, we reveal the face-down cards. Von Francois, a combat card with an ops value of 2, and Race to the Sea with an ops value of 3. So the Germans have a good opportunity to push back the French, especially in this area, Brussels and Cambrai. And Cambrai is a victory point space. However, if the Germans completely demolish the French reduced 9th Army and would be called to advance 2 spaces, they wouldn't be able to advance into Ostend because there's a special rule that prohibits that unless this card, Race to the Sea, has been played for its event. And that card is currently in the B space of the German track. Of course, if the Central Powers play that card now, that would consume the whole round, and then the Allies would have an opportunity to continue to beef up their defenses. And we also note that conceivably the Germans could use these 2 spaces to launch an attack on Verdun, but the prospects there are not very promising because Verdun would fire back at level 6 with a 1 column shift to the right. So that would cause serious casualties on the Germans and would not assure them of taking that fort space. So we're in the 4th action round. There would be 2 more action rounds after this. So the Central Powers will nominate Race to the Sea to play it for its event, and they need a 1 to 4 with the white die. Uh-oh, double 5, that's a random event, and the card that gets played is the Sud Army card. And this card allows an Austro-Hungarian unit to be stacked with 2 German corps, and then one can be able to activate them in the same space for the cost of 1 ops. And we will place this marker on the board as a reminder that this event is in effect. And the Central Powers action number 4 marker goes in the other event box. And because this card has an asterisk beside its event, and it was played for its event, it is permanently eliminated from the game. And now we rotate the other cards and fill space A with a card from the draw pile. Now it's the Allies' 4th action round. We reveal the card in space A, French reinforcements ops value of 3. And we see now that the Allies are in a position of launching a multi-space attack on the German 3rd and 4th Armies that are at Sedan, and possibly a flank attack that could be potentially devastating for the Germans, and if the flank attack fails, could backfire disastrously for the Allies. The Eastern Front, we see the Russians here, which have advanced into Austria-Hungary, but they are not concentrated in sufficient force to execute a strong attack. And we see here in East Prussia, the Germans have their forces concentrated in Tannenberg, and the Russians are mostly taking advantage of the protection of being in their forts. If the Western Allies get a 4 ops card, they will be able to fire on the 12 to 14 combat factor column. However, if they only get a 3 ops card, they would be firing at most in the 9 to 11 column, which is the same column in which the Germans would be firing back at them. The Allies have 2 4 ops cards, Rape of Belgium and Blockade. Rape of Belgium has the better chance of being played at 1 to 4. However, if Rape of Belgium is played, the Allies will probably use it for its ops value, and therefore the event value of increasing the war status by 2 would be lost for now. The card would be placed in a discard pile, and then the Allies would have to wait for it to appear again. So the Allies don't want to fall behind in the commitment level race, because they want to use their limited war cards as soon as possible. And notice that the Blockade card in this round will be rotated out if it's not played. So the Allies will nominate the Blockade card, and they'll have to roll for it, of course, and they need 1 to 3. So we roll the dice, and it's 4, the white result. But because we consult then the alternate black die result, the Allies still get to play the Blockade card, and it'll be played for its ops value of 4. And the Allies activate Cambrai, Château-Thierry, and Verdun for attack, and all spaces will be attacking Sedan. Because the Germans are being attacked, we reveal the card in their A space to see if it's a combat card. It is a combat card, Severe Weather, but its requirements are not met because defending units are not in mountains or swamp spaces, and so this card is ignored. And note that the Bonfrançois card cannot be used either because it only involves combat against Russian units. And because the Allies have 2 spaces, which are Château-Thierry and Cambrai, which are not connected to any other enemy space that is not being attacked, they will attempt a flank attack with a +2 die roll modifier, and they need a final die roll of 4 or more for a successful flank attack. So we roll 1d6 for the flank attack. The result is a 3 + 2, 5. The flank attack is successful. And now the Allies will fire first. We will then take losses from the German armies, and the remaining forces in those German armies will fire back. And the roll is a 4, inflicting 5 loss factors on the defending Germans. The Third Army is flipped to its reduced side, absorbing 3 loss factors. 2 loss factors are left, but the Germans cannot reduce any further units or they will go beyond the loss that was called for. So those 2 remaining loss factors are ignored. Now the Germans fire back, and instead of firing with their 10 factors that they had originally, and they would have used the 9 to 11 column, now they fire with 8 factors and they use the 6 to 8 column. The roll is a 2, inflicting 3 loss factors on the Allied attacking forces. And the Allies will reduce the French Fourth Army, which is in Château-Thierry with the British Expeditionary Force. And now, because the Germans lost the combat, they have to retreat, but because they're in a forest space, they can elect to take another step loss and avoid retreat. The Germans elect to take another step loss from their Fourth Army, which is flipped to its reduced side, and that is the end of the Allied attack and the end of this Allied action round. Because the British participated in this attack, they have complied with the mandatory offensive requirement, so we place a marker in the done space. And we place the Allied fourth action marker in the ops card space. And the blockade card, played for its ops, goes to the discard pile, and we rotate the other cards in the track to the right, and one card goes into space A, face down. Here we see the situation in the Western Front. The Germans took a beating. Their third and fourth armies are now at reduced strength, so the advance on Paris is halted for now. They still have a good opportunity to take Brussels and eliminate that Ninth Army, but they would not be able to advance 2 spaces into Ostend because the race to the sea card has not been played. They have it, they could try to play it, but that would give the initiative back to the Allies. In the Eastern Front, we see that the Austro-Hungarians are holding the line in places with corps units, in this case here in Stanislav with a reduced corps unit. So an attack by the Russian 3rd and 8th armies is a real possibility there. And we see that the Central Powers have no 4 ops cards. The best they have is a 3 ops card, which is Race to the Sea. All other cards are 2 ops cards. So in light that this is the best card in terms of chance of activating that card by playing it, the Germans are closing the door to themselves, advancing on Ostend, Calais, and Amiens for a considerable amount of time. The Germans, wanting to get their units at full strength as soon as possible, will nominate, however, this card, Landwehr, which, if played successfully for its event, will flip 2 reduced German armies back to full strength. A 1 to 4 with a white die is needed. So we roll 2 dice, and yes, the card is successfully played, and it serves to have them receive immediately 2 replacement points to immediately flip supplied reduced strength German units to their full strength side. And the Germans flip their reduced 3rd and 4th armies at Sedan to full strength, and that ends the Central Powers' 5th action round. And we place the 5th Central Powers action round marker in the other events box. And this card, played for its event and having an asterisk, is permanently removed from the game. And now we rotate the remaining cards. Oberost goes to the discard pile, and we move all other cards all the way to the right. And 2 new cards go to spaces A and B. We go to the 5th Allied action round, and we reveal the card in space A, Putnik, a combat card with an ops value of 2. In the Western Front, the Allies have had one of their French armies weakened. They are still in a position to execute another flank attack against the German 3rd and 4th armies at Sedan. They would need 4 ops points to attack from these 3 spaces, and they would have a fair chance of another flank attack, and this time the Germans would not have a card to beef up their reduced forces. They would have to wait until after the action phase and use replacement points, which they have accumulated none, because you need to play cards as for their replacement points for that to happen. The only 4 ops card that the Allies have is Rape of Belgium, and it is in the best position to be played. So the Allies will roll for it. They need a 1 through 5 with the white die. And the result is a 4, so the card will be played for its operational value of 4. And the Allies place attack markers on Chateau-Thierry, Cambrai, and Verdun. We flip the Central Powers cards in spaces A and B to see if there's any combat cards. And there is one, wireless intercepts. But this card only applies to German units against Russian units. So this card is not playable in this combat situation. And note also, as we stated before, that the Central Powers have two other combat cards which also do not apply to this combat situation. So the Allies will attempt the flank attack and they receive a +2. They need a final die roll modifier of 4 or more. So we roll 1d6 and the result was a 4 modified to a 6, so the flank attack is successful. So now the Allies roll first with 13 combat factors on the 12 to 14 factor column. We take the losses off the Germans and then the surviving Germans fire back. And the Allies roll a 6, causing 7 loss factors on the Germans. And the Germans reduce both their 3rd and 4th armies, absorbing 6 loss factors, and the remaining loss factor is ignored. Now the Germans fire back with 6 combat factors. And they also roll a 6, inflicting 5 loss factors on the attacking Allies. The French reduced their 1st army at Verdun, absorbing 3 loss factors, and the remaining 2 loss factors cannot be applied to any of the participating attacking units, so they are ignored. Now the Germans must retreat, but because they're in a wood space, they can elect to suffer another step loss and stay there. But the Germans don't want to send one of their armies to the eliminated/replaceable box yet, so they will both retreat to Koblenz, and the Allies will occupy Sedan with the French 3rd Army and the British Expeditionary Force. And we place the Allied 5th action round marker in the Ops card space. The Rape of Belgium, played for its Ops, goes to the discard pile, and we rotate the cards and take 2 new cards from the draw pile and place them in spaces A and B. Note that now the draw pile has been depleted, so we take the cards currently in the discard pile and we shuffle them. And place them now to form a new draw pile. And here's the situation on the Western Front. The Germans have retreated from Sedan. They have 2 reduced armies. They still have 2 full-strength armies in position to attack and possibly take Brussels. But the British Expeditionary Force is at full strength with another French army nearby. In the Eastern Front, there has not been much action in this first turn, August 1914. The Germans have 3 armies currently on the map at reduced strength, so they may want to play this card for replacement value, and it has replacement factors of 3 for the Germans and 2 for the Austro-Hungarians. So the Central Powers nominates this card, and we roll 2d6, and the result is a white 3, and this card will be played for replacement points. And of the nations listed there, only Austria-Hungary and Germany are currently active in the war, so we register 2 replacement points for Austria-Hungary and 3 for Germany. And we place the 6 action round Central Powers marker here in the replacement point card space. This card being used for replacement points goes to the discard pile, and we rotate the other cards. And we only have 1 card in the draw pile, so we have to shuffle the remaining cards. And we place the topmost card in space A. Now we proceed to the sixth and last action round for the Allies, and we flip the cards in spaces A and B. And the two new cards are Entrench, ops value of 3, and British Reinforcements, ops value of 4. The Allies have sustained the brunt of the German offensive on the Western Front and managed to push back 2 German armies. So it may be a good idea to play that Entrench card to start beefing up their defenses and containing the Germans on this important front. However, we see that the Entrench card is in the A space, a 50-50 chance of being successfully played. The card that has the most chance of being played is the Putnik combat card with only 2 ops. However, the Allies will go for the Entrench card, and we roll 2 dice and consult the white die. A 2, so the Entrench card is successfully played, and it will be played for its event, so we can place a level 1 trench in any space occupied by a supplied friendly army, and now both sides may entrench. And only one side can play this card as an event, and it is being played by the Allies. So the Allies will place this level 1 trench marker here at Sedan. And that strengthens the line on the Western Front, and that concludes the Allied 6th action round. And we place the Allied 6th action round marker here in the other event space. And because this card was played for its event and it has an asterisk, it is removed permanently from the game. And now we perform rotation, and 2 new cards go to spaces A and B, and that's the end of the action phase in this turn. The next phase is the attrition phase, but there are no unsupplied units on the map. Next, the siege phase. There are no besieged forts on the map either. And the war commitment phase is next, but that is skipped by special rule during this first turn, August 1914. Next is the replacement phase. We start with the Allies, but the Allies didn't play any cards for their replacement points, so we go with the Central Powers. The Central Powers played a card which gave the Austro-Hungarians 2 replacement points and the Germans 3. 1 Austro-Hungarian replacement point is spent to recreate the eliminated Third Army, which returns to the map at reduced strength, and it can be placed in its capital, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire has Vienna or Budapest as a capital, so we're going to place it here in Budapest. And the second and last replacement point for the Austro-Hungarians will be spent to bring this unit to full strength, the Second Army at Munkacs, which we now flip. Replacement points have to be spent now or they're lost. We've spent the ones for Austria-Hungary. Now we spend the 3 German replacement points. 2 replacement points are spent to bring the German 3rd and 4th armies to full strength. And with the remaining replacement point, 2 reduced corps can be flipped to full strength, and we flip the corps that is in Bremen. And we also flip to its full strength side the German corps at Oppeln. And that concludes the replacement phase. Now the next phase would be the draw strategy card phase, but because of the nature of this CDG solo method, where we always have cards in the card display track, this step is obviated, and this is the end of this August 1914 turn and the end of this demonstration. This concludes this video presentation of the CDG solo method using Paths of Glory. Of course, this is a work in progress, and I appreciate your comments, critiques, ideas, suggestions, anything that will improve upon this. I've tried to add uncertainty to the solo play of CDGs because uncertainty is a big element in that particular type of game. The card displays are available for download at Board Game Geek's Paths of Glory page in the File section. So please leave your comments, and for me it was a pleasure to do this video. I love CDGs and they are here to stay. So this is Stuka Joe signing off for now. Thanks for watching.